Well, here we are, Harley-Davidson's FXDR 114. The 114 is easy enough to explain, but the FXDR, well, I've got my own theory on that. 114 obviously relates to the 114 cubic inch Milwaukee-Eight that you see sitting there between the frame rails. It's an absolute monster of an engine, there's no denying that. 160 newton meters of torque, so you've got more torque than you will ever need. But hey, this bike is essentially the spiritual successor to the V-Rod. V-Rod was discontinued last year, so this bike sits in its place. Now the FXDR, I have my own feelings on what that stands for. I kind of think FXDR is an acronym for Extreme Daily Riding. As you can see, it's a pretty extreme machine. Long raked out front end with about 53-54 millimeter upside down forks, twin brakes up front with twin 4-pot calipers, and out the back you've got a nice big disc with 2-pot calipers as well. You definitely need it. This bike is quite heavy, but in saying that, it handles pretty damn well as well. So dry weight is 289 kilograms, I believe. Add to that 16.5 litres of fuel, and you have around 300 kilograms of bike plus yourself to move around. So for me, I'm over 100 kilos, that's 400 kilograms to move around, so those brakes definitely come in handy. Backed by ABS, of course, so no worries there. One thing I really do like about this bike is the fact that it's got LED lighting all round. You're never going to have an issue with light bulbs going out and everything like that. There is one caveat to that though, and that's the front indicators. I'm not particularly keen on them. They look a bit ugly to me. You sit behind the bars and they stick out like dog's balls. I think Harley could have done a wee bit of a better job there, making those look more aesthetically pleasing. Another really cool feature about the FXDR is its dash. It's actually quite small, but that means that you don't have to be looking at a giant speedo while you're riding this thing, which at times is a good thing, at other times really bad. I found it quite easy to miss the speed I was doing while I was out for a ride. Harley-Davidson have positioned this as a sports cruiser in their line. They technically call it a power cruiser, but in all of their marketing they say it goes really well on the straights and in the corners, and for a Harley-Davidson, and even keeping in mind that Harleys have come a really long way in handling in the last couple of years, this thing really hauls ass in cornering. You've got really decent lean angle on either side. The exhaust has been specifically designed to allow the maximum lean angle possible, and let's not forget, it looks damn cool. I do have quite a lot of favourite features about this bike, but one of my undoubted favourites has to be the fuel cap. I know it's a weird thing to really like, but you just sit behind the bars and you look down and it's exquisite. It's hard to really explain why it's just so evocative, but you've got the beautiful Harley-Davidson bar and shield there. Let's just move the camera, shall we? Check that puppy out. Now, if you can't sit behind those bars and look at that cap, well, there's something wrong with you if you don't like that. That is a very stylish piece of kit. There are a couple of negatives to this bike, as every bike is. There's no such thing as a perfect bike, but there's no such thing as a rubbish bike either. It is quite pricey. It's $37,500 plus on-road costs, and then of course it's only got a solo seat, which means you can't share the joy of riding it with someone else. I know some people will be realistic and know that a lot of people don't want to get on the back of a motorcycle, but for a lot of Kiwis, taking a pillion or dreaming of taking a pillion, that's a big thing. I believe Harley-Davidson do offer a pillion kit for this bike, but pricing is yet to be passed on to me at least. There is one last negative thing about this bike, but it's also mixed in with a positive. One of the standout features of the FXDR is, of course, that air cleaner. The air cleaner itself just looks awesome, and it sticks out like dog's balls. There's no denying that this bike is an FXDR when you see that air intake. But when you're sitting on the bike, it hits your knee. Let's take a seat here, shall we? Swing the leg over, and boom, right below my knee, that air filter is hitting. It's not a major problem. Like, this bike is awesome fun, but when you're trying to make the most of that cornering ability that it's got, you do find that you get a wee bit of a sore patch just below your knee, upper shin area. Being a Softail model, that means that the FXDR of course comes with a really handy preload adjuster just below your right butt cheek. Factory form, if it's loosened all the way out, bike doesn't handle that great. It does have a 240mm rear wheel on the back, 240mm wide. That's wider than most car tyres. And if you don't have your preload turned up, it does get a bit of a handful to turn around the corners. I've cranked it up to number 2 and it makes a huge difference. You can go all the way up to number 5, but for me that sweet spot was on the number 2 setting on that rear preload adjuster. It makes all the difference in the world, and going in through tight twisty corners, this bike was actually pretty flickable. Of course, saying that, it's still a cruiser. It's not like you can compare this to a full-on sports bike. But hey, if you're into cruisers and you like to go around corners and link them up together, look no further, this is your bike. Don't forget to tune in to www.onthrottle.co.nz for more news, reviews and everything motorcycling, all tailored for the Kiwi motorcyclist.